Welcome to Rogue Bogues. This is a bonus episode for all you NBL fans here in Australia and around the world. I have an opportunity to speak to a basketball guru here in Australia, and we're going to break down the NBL upcoming season and give you a preview. And none better than to join us, John Casey. Case, welcome to Rogue Bogues.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bogues. Good to catch up with you.
And we're just talking about it off air. This is now your fourth decade covering basketball, correct?
You're making me sound very old, but that is true. I started back in the 1980s. So I think the first season of the NBL was way back in 1979. So I've seen the black and white footage of St Kilda winning on the buzzer in that first championship game. And yeah, I've seen a few games since then, and it's been such an enjoyable ride to see the growth of the league and so many fantastic players coming through. And highlighted today by Josh Giddey, lighting it up in the NBA again. What a great performance he's putting in there in the NBA in his rookie season.
Yeah, having a great run, especially coming from the NBL. But you've seen all facets of Australian basketball. You're obviously the lead play-by-play guru. I was fortunate enough to work with at the 2020 or 21 Olympics, whatever you want to call it, out in Tokyo, where we commentated the basketball and got to witness that special moment for the Boomers.
Yeah, it was. 110 days ago today since the Boomers won the rolled gold medal, which they like to refer to it to, the bronze, picking up the bronze. And actually, now that you've brought it up, I'd really like to ask you a question before you start asking me some questions about this NBL season. I don't know if going off script is okay on Road Boats.
That's what it's all about. That's the name.
Okay. Well, here's my question. When the Boomers won the bronze medal, I got the impression that you had, I think, it hit you. There seemed to be a moment I was looking at you and I thought, that's just hit him. It's just hit Bogues here that they've won a medal. And that was so important to you and to everyone involved, as Andrew Gaze went on to expand on with his emotional performance, which was absolutely outstanding. But I just got the impression you seemed pretty cool, pretty laid back, everything. Nothing seemed to faze you. But it looked like it dawned on you that they've done it and I'm not there and I've been such a big part of this. And it wasn't that you weren't there. I don't know. Maybe it was a little bit of the fact that you weren't there. But I think that I know a lot of people probably underestimate what you did and how much you've put in to make the Boomers a successful campaign, a successful group. And I'm sure, you would have been a little disappointed that you weren't there on the floor. If COVID hadn't hit, you would have been. And you'd have an Olympic medal now to add to your collection. Am I around the mark or did I just misread something there?
Yeah, when you're in the moment commentating and obviously we were doing our prep work and trying to get through all that stuff to prepare for different countries and proud of the boys playing well, you don't really, I guess, feel it. But then once that final siren went, especially after the USA performance, like we were playing very good basketball in that game and we probably all thought that we had a real good crack and then just had a bad finish to the first half, which led into the second half, and then the US ran over us. But to bounce back from that and do something that no one's ever done, it was an emotional moment. There was some FOMO there, Case, for sure. Not so much as I was jealous of these blokes, more like, damn, like why couldn't the body hold up? Why couldn't you just get one more year out, you stubborn bastard, and go out and just, even if it was a couple of minutes a night and just be part of that. But just awesome to see. And life goes full circle, right? Like Gorgon's story with all that, never won a medal. We've never won a medal, but Gorge was involved with some campaigns where it was more of a rebuild to then lead us to our first medal was just sensational. And as Paddy and Joe and everyone have said now, this is the bare minimum. The bar's being set. So hopefully, the names you mentioned earlier, Josh Giddey, some other younger guys coming through. Dyson Daniel's a young kid now playing very well over there in the G League. So a lot of great young prospects coming up. And I have a feeling this might not be the last medal we get, Case.
Yeah, definitely so. I think it's onwards and upwards from here. And another thing that I heard Joe Ingles and Paddy Mills in particular talk about was that this wasn't only their medal, it was for every player that had pulled on the green and gold since the 1956 Olympics when we first represented at the Olympic Games in men's basketball. And I really hope that everyone, including yourself, that's played a part, has pulled on the singlet and, done everything that you could in your career to make a success and win a medal at the Olympic level shares in the success that we had in Tokyo, because it was a long time coming and a lot of hiccups along the way. I remember when we lost to Spain in Rio and just the devastation that felt like, when we were leading inside the last 10 seconds but couldn't get across the line for various reasons. But that was such a devastating hit. But now to win the bronze and look ahead and know that, we are potentially a silver and maybe even a gold medal contender. So it's just a matter of maintaining that charge toward the pinnacle.
It is, and I think that what Paddy and Joe have instilled about this is everyone's medal. Sometimes that can be taken as lip service, but it isn't. I think we need to establish those past roots of the Boomers, which has been a bit of an issue with Basketball Australia at times, of really making sure that if you've done, once a Boomer, always a Boomer, once an Opal, always an Opal. And I think we really need to reestablish that connection. I think Paddy did a fantastic job of, I know when he came back to Australia and he was in Brisbane, he had the Brisbane-based or Queensland-based Boomers and former Boomers all go get together and have a lunch and a coffee and a beer. And I think they're the kind of things that you need to instill. So it's more than just playing for your country, and it's more than just a national team. It's once a Boomer, always a Boomer. And I think starting that off now with a bronze medal and continuing on with that is just a fantastic story. So yeah, real passionate, real emotional time. I mean, Gazy probably said it best, and he's a guy that has lived and breathed it for many decades with his father and a rich basketball history. But let's just hope this isn't the last piece of medal that we get.
Just absolutely great memories of the whole campaign, and I hope that they can replicate that catch-up that they had in Queensland, in Brisbane, for the Boomers that spread out around Australia. I'd love to see a meeting here in South Australia and get the likes of Phil Smythe and Peter Ally and all those others, Mike Mackay and Daryl Pearce, all involved. Get one of the bronze medalists to come and bring that medal and just let them touch it, smell it, feel it, and know that they were a part of building the legacy that has got Australian men's basketball onto the podium at the Olympics.
No doubt. All right, well, let's get into the NBL. It's a strange kind of feel to it with obviously we're in a strange part of a time in world history and just everything going on. COVID's thrown some spanners in the works. Even last season, the NBA, NBL, we've spoken about that at length with numerous different people, but it's kind of, I think this is a pretty somewhat wide open season. Look, I think there's a few outliers that kind of, there's a couple of teams you predict that will be at the bottom, but I've really struggled to pick at least my top four. I've struggled to put my ladder together, but how do you see this season? Do you think I'm right, or do you think that it's pretty clear cut with the top end of it?
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Bogues. It's an outstanding lineup of teams. We've got 10 teams now for the back to 10 teams with the introduction of the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers. But trying to pick a top four is always tough, because those teams that are around the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh mark, it's going to come down to perhaps injuries and a little bit of luck here and there, and winning tight games and making sure you take care of business when you're at home. So I've worked out my top four. But it wasn't a very easy thing to do. And I have to say that I've left the defending champs Melbourne out of the top four. I noticed Shane Heal also left them out of his top four. And you very rarely will see that in the NBL, where the reigning champs, not to make the finals the following year. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds for Dean Bickerman, and obviously Delhi back there running the show there, but no Jock Landale this year, and the changes that they've made. I think I just couldn't squeeze them in there. So they're not in my top four, but yeah, trying to rate each team is difficult. And I think it really is, as it generally goes, how your imports go is how the team will go. So it's going to rely on who stands up, and many of those imports are unknown to Australia and FIBA basketball, the Australian basketball style. So that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, and I think United have one import spot up their sleeve still, don't they, potentially?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that will be kind of, if they're looking to make a change mid-season or early on, or if they're still looking, I believe they have one spot left where they can make some moves. But anyway, let's get into it. I'm going to start with the Sydney Kings. I have a bit of a bias. Obviously, I have them. We'll go through our ladder later, but I have them first. It's owner bias. I have to, otherwise I'll cop shit. And I want to be optimistic. But I really do believe we have a really, really good balanced roster. I think Chris Pongrass has done a fantastic job. We have the luxury of not having to rush Dejan Vasiljevic back, prolific scorer, fantastic rookie year. Obviously, hurt his Achilles tore his Achilles last season, and we thought, shit, we need him back on the court, provide scoring. Where we're now, with the way our roster's looking, we feel very well balanced. We have a good mix of youth and probably could do with a little bit more veteran leadership. So we probably need a few of our younger guys probably to step up a little bit. Sean Bruce has been fantastic. Vodanovic has been awesome in that category. But there's a lot of youth. I don't know if you've caught any of the preseason games, but Chase Buford is all about the 6 seconds or less offense. We are flying the ball up the floor, and I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. So it'll all be how it mixes. But I've got the Kings at the top of the table, Case.
Well, you're a braver man than me because I don't have the Kings at the top. But as you say, you've got owner bias. Well, but I don't, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they bring to the table. I love what Chase Buford's doing, as you say, getting up and down the floor. And there's certainly some great talent there. I've been impressed with Boali Bales. He can really ball out. Angus Glover fully fit's going to be interesting, what he can bring to the table as well. But I think Xavier Cooks has been outstanding in the NBL Blitz so far. Really like what he's done. He had a double-double against Melbourne, backed it up with a double-double against New Zealand. So he's making a statement that this is going to be his best year. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to come back down to the imports. We know what we're going to get from Jarrell Martin. But what your other imports, RJ Hunter and Jalen Adams, can bring, well, that's a little bit of an unknown at the moment. And I think that, how they play is going to dictate where the Sydney Kings finish. But I had the Kings down in 6th spot, would you believe? Ouch. I know the bookmakers. Yeah, well, again, as I say, once you get to that 4th position and 5th and 6th, it's really hard. And the team that I've got at 6th, well, the Kings, they're the favourites according to the bookmakers. I just think it's tough for a first-year coach to come in and be able to have an immediate impact. I know it's been done in the past, but this league gets tougher and tougher every year, and I think it's getting tougher and tougher for a rookie coach to come in, or a first-year coach in the NBL. I shouldn't call him a rookie, but and how those imports gel, look, I just don't know if they can get enough wins on the board to finish in the top 4, the Sydney Kings, but I'm really excited about the way they play and the talent that they've got. So they're going to be one of the must-see teams this year in the NBL.
Yeah, and obviously we're talking about rosters fully healthy, so just to give everyone a feel for what we're picking on. I think Jarrell Martin had a fantastic season last season, a little bit injury prone at times, but I think he's come back in phenomenal shape. I don't know if you've seen many games, but he's definitely dropped some weight. He was a bit heavy last season, so he looks fantastic. DJ will obviously come back to the tail end of the season, which can actually be used as a bonus to give us a bit of life if we're kind of running through mud when those seasons get a little bit tough. But Jalen Adams, I mean, playing both ends of the floor is solid. And then we're forgetting the Maker brothers to an extent, and Makua Maker, I think he really has an opportunity to be a potentially an NBA player. He has the body, he has the length, and obviously went over to Howard for a season and did all that. But look, a good mix of young players. Jordan Hunter's actually hurt his finger, so he's out for a little bit. But yeah, I'm looking forward just to seeing how it gels, and that's going to be the $1 million question for the Sydney Kings: is can this all be cohesive and mix well in Chase Buford's system? But I'm excited as an owner to see this squad together, and hopefully it will be towards the top of the table. Yeah,
well, I think you should be excited as an owner because the squad that's been put together does look really good. And as I say, it will come down to how it all gels together. And I'm a little hesitant about talking up players that haven't played here before, whether particularly with the imports, because, well, we don't have to go back too far to see, people who have arrived in Australia with a big reputation and were going to be all this and all that who weren't able to produce for whatever reason. So really hard when you haven't seen too much form. I've watched I think we've had 14 NBL Blitz games so far. I've seen every one. So, but, everyone's been playing restricted minutes or haven't played the full team or has injuries. So I don't know how much of a read you can get on what's going on at the Blitz at the moment, but certainly winning form is good form. And those teams at the top like Adelaide and Brisbane, well, they'll be pretty happy to be undefeated, and likewise Illawarra. But Sydney, to me, jury's still out, Bogues. Couldn't get them in the top 4 in my pre-season calculations, but for your sake, I hope I'm wrong when we get to the pointy end of the season.
Yeah, fair enough. And just one quick shout out to Angus Glover. He has looked phenomenal in pre-season. He has had a horror run with injuries, with the knee injuries, and just a great young kid, great young talent who's stared down the barrel numerous times of potentially his career. He's been told at times he's crazy for going on, and he continues to battle. And he's had a fantastic pre-season, and I hope he has an injury-free 10 years ahead of him in his basketball basketball career. So shout out to him. Let's go on to your hometown Adelaide 36ers. Made spent a fair bit of money this offseason, Case. That salary cap's inching over into the tax, I think. It'd be close, but notably as well, a late pickup in Cam Bairstow, which, he's had a horror run with injuries the last couple of seasons, hasn't really found a home, struggled a little bit with Brisbane at times when he was up there. But look, I think Adelaide. I don't have them in my top 4. I have them in 6. But I think they're going to steal some games every now and then. They have some gunners on that team. Daniel Johnson, seasoned veteran, great scorer. Dusty Hannahs. Now he's going to get them up. But he can.
Yep.
He might have a few 30 balls, close to 40 balls, with how much he gets them up. He might shoot you out of a game or two, but he might also keep you in a game. McCarron, utilities guy, probably a guy they needed at the guard spot. Yep. Whenever you can get an Australian local at the guard spot who's a top 3, top 4 Australian in the league in his position, that helps your salary cap immensely because that'll obviously be a marquee. Isaac Humphries, his health will be a question. One thing I noticed about Adelaide, a lot of bigs, a lot of 4-5s. King can play a bit of the 3-4. You've got Kai Soto, you've got Humphries, you've got Daniel Johnson. So I'm not sure how that all fits minutes-wise, but where do you see them and what should we expect from them?
Well, I'm not an owner in the league such as yourself, but it's interesting that Grant Kelly, the owner of the team, as you say, he has loosened the purse strings, and Jeff Van Groningen's done an outstanding job to go and recruit this team that they put together, because maybe it's my Adelaide living here bias, but I've got Adelaide on top. And right now they're undefeated. They've won 3 games. I'll tell you why I've got them on top, because I love their versatility. A couple of things. They got 3 or 4 ball carriers, and we see them all playing at once. In the Blitz, we've seen, McCarron and Dusty Hannahs. Withers carries the ball. Sunday Detch can carry the ball. Mojave King does it. Nick Marshall, I think, is going to make a real statement in his rookie season this year. And the new coach as well. Now, CJ has got runs on the board. 6-time champion. He's got, as a player, he's certainly got the pedigree through his dad in basketball, and I've heard him referred to as a real players coach. Well, I think that undersells him. He is more than a players coach. He's going to be a great coach. And I think Adelaide, they've been proactive. You talked about the height that they've got. Well, that's outstanding, because they are now being proactive and want teams, rather than try and see what a team does and counter that to a certain degree, they're going to do something and make other teams try and counteract what they're doing. So I like the fact that they're going proactive. And if you look at the personnel, well, Mitch McCarron is the best Australian point guard in the competition. I would argue, and I don't think many people would argue against me, that Daniel Johnson is the best 4 in the competition. Isaac Humphries, to me, is the best Australian centre in the competition. So there's 3 key elements of your starting 5. Put in 2 imports. Dusty Hannahs averaged 20 in the G League 2 seasons ago. And whether it's Withers, although I'm hearing Mojave King will get the start when the season gets underway, I think that 5 is outstanding. And then off the bench, you've got the likes of Bairstow. You've got the likes of Sunday Detch, who's in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation every year. You've got maybe Withers coming off the bench. Manny Malou's going to be handy for them. And Kai Soto is better than anyone gives him credit for. Go and check out his FIBA highlights and the World Cup qualifiers, and he can ball. He's not just here as a project player and a stepping stone to the NBA. Of course, that's where we think he's going to end up, but he's here to make a statement. So I'm really positive about Adelaide, and I think they can win the whole thing.
Big call. They had a talented roster last season to extend as well. Injury hit them at numerous times. My worry is just, I know CJ very well, but just a rookie head coach in the league. Thankfully, he has that experience.
But is he a rookie?
Yeah, I mean, head
I know technically he is.
Yeah, head coaching's a whole different ballgame, though. Okay, so in my opinion, I think he's probably the best suited non-head coach to be a head coach, because he's been around the league so long. He's been an assistant under numerous different coaches. I know he head coaches in the in whatever it's called now, is it the QBL still up in Queensland. So he has coaching experience. But once you're coaching men, with arguably, there are a lot of people that are picking them top 4. So the expectations there for a rookie coach, I think he'll be okay. I think there'll be adjustment periods. I just need to be sold on whether it all meshes. There's only so many minutes, Case, and that's a concern I have for this team, is will Kai Soto be okay with one night having an 8-minute night because King's killing it, or vice versa? We know King had some issues in Cairns with minutes at times, wanted to be a full-time starter. If he gets benched, does he crack the shits and then cause some issues? So that's That's what I have gripe-wise. I think McCarron's a good leader to try and keep all the guys.
The best. He's the best point guard in the competition, Bogues. Name a better one.
Yeah, and especially as a guy he's not a very vocal guy, but I think he leads by example. I think, I've heard that United at times wanted him to be more vocal and more of that leadership quality. That's not his personality, but he will lead by example, and I think they will be leaning on him a lot to be vocal in that locker room and say, hey, let's get it together, guys. We've got to stay on the same page. I think Daniel Johnson's role will be that as well. He's another quiet guy. So my only concern is that it's that when they have, because everyone in the NBL is going to hit a 2-week lull or a 3-week lull, is how they bounce through that. And that's kind of what cost them last season. When they hit a lull, it went downhill real quick. But I think I have them probably a little low, but I think they're one of the most talented rosters in the league. But I need to see it before I believe it, Case.
Yeah, I understand that completely. You make some good points. There's only 3 players from last year. I think you could ignore what happened last year. They've got 3 players back. A new coach this year as well. So I think a lot of things didn't work out last year, including the injury to Isaac Humphries. But Isaac Humphries, he stays healthy, then I think they're a championship contender. And I spoke with him at the Blitz prior to their first game, and he's all energy. He's all about maintaining what he did in the first part of last season, where he was in the MVP conversation before he was injured. He wants to get back to that and maintain that for the whole season because he wants to prove he is the best big in this competition. He has a point to prove. He said he's got an even bigger chip on his shoulder now, bigger than the one that he had when he came back last season. So I really like the way that he's talking things up. And look, I just see Adelaide's versatility, as I say, with all those ball carriers and already the leadership we're seeing from Mitch McCarron in the Blitz, where they got into a sticky situation and he was able to think his way through it. His IQ is off the charts. Rarely makes a mistake, always happy to be a pass-first point guard. I think he brings so much to the table. I mean, he could have went to any team in the competition. The hottest free agent in the off-season, he ended up in Adelaide on a 3-year deal. So speaks volume for the 36ers. For a big amount of money,
Case, I can say, we might or might not have had him on our free agent board, but once we heard some of those numbers that Grant Kelly and Van Groningen threw out, we were like, whoa, I don't know if we have that in our cap. So he was lauded by a lot of teams. The Jack Jumpers too were after him, and he's not a flashy, high-scoring, that's the star of a team guy. But you look at his stat sheet at the end of the night, he might have 7 points, 9 assists, 3 steals, 1 turnover, and that's kind of what you want on that team. With all that, if they didn't have that talent and scoring around him, you'd scratch your head a little bit at him making that kind of money because you'd be like, he needs to score being paid that amount of money. Because they have so much scoring, he's the perfect utilities guy. So for fans out there, you're not going to see 20-plus point nights from him. And if you know the game, he's going to really affect the game in different ways. So I agree with you there. I think that was, and it's a cultural shift for Adelaide. I think they've instead of going after a flashy, high-scoring name that kind of isn't a winner, that they'll get bums and seats, but they're not going to really get you wins. They've gone the opposite route where they've paid big money for a guy that isn't overly flashy, but I think will get you more wins. So that's a win for Adelaide, in my opinion. Yeah,
and that's the key point. He's going to get you more wins because the way he plays down the stretch, his IQ, he's going to run the ship. There was a game there during the Blitz that they could have lost. In fact, they would have lost in previous years because the point guard isn't the Mitch McCarron point guard who's always making good decisions. He almost dribbled the clock down at one stage because that was the best thing to do into the circumstances. I just think he brings so much to the table. And you're right, it is a cultural shift because when's the last time Adelaide picked up the hottest free agent in the off-season? I can't remember it. And Mitch McCarron signing a 3-year deal, he's here for the long haul. And as the reigning championship point guard, he brings so much to the table. And as I say, I'm just really excited about what the Adelaide 36ers can do this year.
Yeah, we'll watch that space. That'll be interesting. Okay, let's go on to our first year Tasmania Jack Jumpers case. I guess the easy question is, can they finish any higher than last? I know some people have Cairns down the bottom, but I think they will be last. I think they're going to battle. I don't mind their top 6, 7, but I think beyond that, there's a drop-off, and I think that's what's going to cost them. Their expansion team, the old school terminology from the NBA, they have some talent. have some guys that can score. I like the Steindl pickup. He's a guy that can get you buckets. Maggotti's been raved about in preseason. Magnay's looking much better. He looked like a shell of himself last season in his stint in Perth, but he looks much, much better. I think they've got some players, but I just think that there's not enough depth on that roster, and they're an injury away from potentially, having a really, really bad inaugural, first season. So I think they'll battle. They'll be in games. I think it's going to be one of those situations where they battle for 3 quarters and then still lose by 14 at times, but they won't be, they'll battle, and that's what you want from an expansion first year team. But I don't see them finishing. I've got them dead last. And yeah, where do you see them finishing up? And do you think they have any chance to get above last?
Yeah, well, I think they do. I don't have them in my top 4. I don't think they can make the top 4 in their first year. I agree with most of what you say, that the depth is going to be an issue for them. And that one injury, if Will Magnay was to get injured, and let's knock on wood here that doesn't happen, because I think he's the key. Behind him, there isn't a lot of depth. He has to stay healthy. He has to play at his optimum, and his best is very good. But I guess most teams you could say, well, if we have an injury, then it's really going to hurt our chances. But I think, Will Magnay is such a key for them. But you're right, they just don't have the depth. The depth that they need. Maggott is looking like a very good contributor as the guard, and I think we're going to be excited about what we'll see from their other import as well. Josh Adams, really like what he brings to the table. Sam McDaniel, I thought, was outstanding last year when the way he finished the season with Melbourne United, and deservedly has picked up a bigger contract down with Tasmania. And, Steindl as the captain, I think, is a good pickup. Tough. I think one of the hardest things when you're the captain, if you're a specialist 3-point shooter, is what do you do when you have a quiet night and people, you're letting it fly and it's not working for you? I think that's really tough for a captain. But he's a quality player. Jared Bairstow. Matt Kenyon is going to be a surprise packet this year. Really like what I've seen from him in the Blitz as well. And as you say, they've got other role players there like Jack McVeigh, Jared Weeks, Fabian Krislovic, and even McIntosh, their other import. He looks like he can come in and do some good things for them. But it's always tough in your first year in the competition. And Tassie, look, I think they've been a success already. And the reason I say that is because we saw almost 1,000 people at Ulverston, Tasmania, grassroots basketball fans, seeing these guys and the best the NBL has to offer up close and personal, pressing the flesh, doing sort of promotional things there, speaking to the kids, promoting basketball. So it's a win already for Tasmania. Do I think they're going to win the title? No, I don't think they're going to make the finals. But I think that they can, they're going to surprise a few people, and they're going to thrill basketball-starved fans in Tasmania. So hats off to Larry Kesselman and all the people in Tasmania. I think they're going to be, for a lot of people, the second favourite team, because we want them to succeed. And credit to everyone involved, and I'll look forward to seeing them surprise a few teams.
Yeah, no doubt. I was fortunate enough to play in some of the last games in Tassie with the national team before basketball completely left the state. So they love basketball there. They love sport there. They often get, as we know, shunned by the bigger leagues, with no one actually permanently basing a team there. So I think it was a no-brainer. The arena is supposed to be, looking really good when that's all completely completed, nice and shiny, and they open those doors. I think that's a great story. But I just think they'll have their speed bumps along the way. They have some battlers on that team. I just think there'll be a drop off there. They have a rookie head coach as well. Let's not forget he was involved with one of the best in the business with Trevor Gleeson in Scott Roth, and a guy that I know very well. He was a scout with the Milwaukee Bucks when I was there playing with the Milwaukee Bucks, and then had stints kind of all over the league with Toronto Raptors and whatnot. So he's going to have his work out cut out for him too, starting out a whole new he's basically the face. He's going to be the guy that you remember because he's the first head coach of a new franchise. So there is a bit of pressure there. Yeah,
exactly right. And just back to what you were talking about with the stadium, I've been lucky enough to be down there just prior to when the Blitz started on the first day. And that stadium is outstanding. It's picture perfect, right on the water there. And I know this isn't going to add to their chances of winning a game, but just in terms of, if any NBL fans who are listening are contemplating a trip down to Tassie, go and do it. It's a beautiful stadium. What they've done in terms of the fan engagement there with the facilities is outstanding. And the locker rooms, well, outside of what the Sydney Kings enjoy at the former Olympic Stadium, I'd say they're the best in the country. Some of the shocked look I got on the faces of visiting players who were there who'd been into the change rooms. I can't recall who the player was, but he walked out of the change room and he said, "Have you been into the change room? It's unbelievable." and one of the Jack Jumpers ancillary staff was there, and he said, you should go and see the home change room. And he said, that's not the home. He said, no, that's the away team. It was blown away. And the facilities there are first class. It's going to be a raucous night there. You know, they've got over 3,000 members, I think, so it's almost going to be a sellout most nights. So if you're contemplating going down to sample what the Jack Jumpers are all about, I'd thoroughly recommend it. And I'm thrilled that I'm going to be there on opening night, working on the sidelines there just to take in the atmosphere myself. But I'd recommend it to all the NBL fans to get down and have a look.
And it's fully completed, or is there still a few finishing touches they're doing?
No, fully completed. Admittedly, that was opening night. There was a lot of last-minute things being done, but as far as I could tell, it was all fully completed. And they spent $60 million on it, and they've done a terrific job of it. Congratulations again to Tasmanian basketball and every single person involved.
Yeah, beautiful. I'll have to take the ferry over one day and make it a weekend.
Get down there, Bogues. Yeah. You won't be disappointed.
I have to get down there. I love Tasmania, to be honest. I've only been there a couple of times, but a lot of nice muscle cars there too, Case, that are just hidden in people's garages. I've purchased a few cars down that way, but beautiful part of the world, very, very, very clean, very, very proud people. So hopefully they don't finish last. Unfortunately, I have put you last. Next one, we're going to the Cairns Taipans. Now, a lot of people have Cairns down towards the bottom, 40. Former head coach of the Sydney Kings is there. Look, he's gonna make them work. They're gonna be a tough team. They're not gonna beat themselves, if that makes sense. They're gonna battle. Some things I've noticed. Look, their roster's not as deep as recent years. It still starts and ends with Scott Machado. That's the be all and end all. That's the head of the Taipan, quote unquote. Where if you can limit what he does, they really generally won't win many games if he's not firing, especially this season. I think in the past, they probably got away with him having some bad games and still winning because they had a few other pieces. One thing I've noticed that Ford has made a priority was that they're getting the ball to Nathan Jawai in preseason. And he's not starting, or he wasn't in preseason. He's coming off the bench. But if you've got the biggest, strongest guy to play in the NBL, if not one of the biggest and strongest to ever play in the NBL, get him the damn ball every minute. He's not going to play. He's not playing 30. He's playing, 15 to 20. He's coming off the bench. They're making it an effort. Force feed Nate Jawai while he's on the floor. Yes, they can go at him and pick and roll defensively, but we're going to punish you at the other end. And I've made a note of that because I like that. I think if you've got Nate out on the floor, there's no point him being, just standing around offensively, setting a few pick and rolls. Get him the damn ball. There's no one in the league that can guard him. If he's refereed fairly, where he's, not getting called for offensive fouls every other trip down, he's a very, very tough cover. And I even struggled, with my height and strength in the NBL when he had a couple of games against me and knocks you around. He's a mammoth human being with a lot of athleticism. So I've liked that. And finally, I think Mirko Jeric will shoot him into some wins. They will be down. I've got them as a ninth, just above the Jack Jumpers. But I think Jeric is one of those X factors where they can be having a bad game and teams kind of put the cue in the rack thinking, there's 3 minutes left. We're up by 11. We're home. And then he did this last season in 2 or 3 games where he goes bang, 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 and you lose a game and you're like, man, we should have won that game. So they have a few players. They've got Pinder from Adelaide as well. So they'll battle, but I just don't think they're deep enough or have enough talent to really cause any problems.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I just don't see the depth is there nor the talent is there for them to really make the Final Four and get into the playoffs. So completely agree with you about Nate Jawai, though. I've always been a big fan of his, and we saw in the game against Perth during the Blitz, he had 21 points on 10 of 13 from the field. And I couldn't agree with more with what you said about just dump the ball down low to him. And if he's inspired, if he's, switched on, no one can guard him, and he's going to draw a double team or even a triple team, and he's a good passer. I just think he brings so much to the table. And in the absence of a superstar import, big, then I'd agree with that. Just keep getting the ball down to him. And at some stages during the Blitz, they've run actually Nate Jawai and Zimmerman on the floor together. And I like that. 2 bigs, make them play you. If you don't have the overall talent to beat another team, well, mix it up, try something that they have to match and go with that. And Zimmerman's been impressive. He had 18 and 11 against Adelaide in the overtime game with the 36ers just got home. He had 16 and 11 against Tasmania. So he's putting good numbers up, and he's such a big and nice touch close to the basket. He's going to score you a lot of points. And throw into the mix Taj Mccall as well. I've been impressed with him so far. He had 14 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists against the Perth Wildcats. He's going to be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation without a doubt. In fact, right now he is my tip for Defensive Player of the Year. A great guy to speak to. Spent some time with him in Tasmania just prior to the Blitz. Real good attitude, coming to win, playing hard every night. He's almost, there are a couple of times during the games I've seen in the Blitz where he's put his body on the line and gone down hard. He bounces back up, not hurt, I'm playing on, let's get on with it. Come on, bring it again. Round 2. And I love that attitude from him. I think he's going to be a real fan favourite. He'll bring a lot to the table. And they certainly are going to create havoc for some teams. They're going to have good nights and they're going to have bad nights. But just so far, I'm a little bit worried about Scott Machado. What was seen from him in the Blitz just looks a little, not disinterested, but I just don't know that Scott Machado is going to get back to that runner-up MVP type form that we've seen from him in the past. And if he doesn't bring his best and really isn't dictating, then I think it could be a long season for them. But you're right about Keanu Pinder. I think he's a good pickup for them. Courtney, well, it's time for him to step up, to be completely frank. And I think that he needs to have a good season because it's the likes of him and Majuk Deng and, as you say, Mirko Jeric and even Jordan Nartai. They need to start making a statement that they've had experience and time in the league now. The team needs you to step up. It's time for you to step up if Cairns are going to drag themselves out of that bottom 3 where most experts seem to be tipping that they'll finish.
No doubt. One question I have is around, Ford likes to play his kind of veteran star players big minutes. So I'm interested to see how that goes in the long run of a season. If they get an injury or two, I know he likes to shorten rotations. He's definitely not one of those coaches that messes around. Like if he puts you in off the bench and you make a mistake early, he's going to pull you and sit you for the rest of the night. So I know, as you said about Scott Machado, I think it starts and ends with him. Like I said, if he's not coming in as a, he was an MVP candidate a couple of seasons ago. If he's not coming in with that mentality, they're going to come out of the gates flat and they're just not going to be able to compete. And then all sorts of issues are going to arise. But there's a lot of guys on that team with question marks. Noy's another one. He was a fringe NBA player at the time of signing with Cairns and thought it was going to be a 1-year stopover before he got back over there. And that hasn't eventuated. So they have a lot of guys with chips on their shoulders that can maybe get them a few extra wins. But yeah, as I said, I've got them towards the bottom.
Yep.
All right, let's go on to the New Zealand Breakers. So,
wow.
Yeah, interesting roster, but I just don't see it again. I have them floating around. I have them around 7, just below Adelaide. I think they'll be competitive in spurts. I think a few things hurt them. Abercrombie, number 1, as this was a bit of a lot. No offense to Abercrombie, but they labelled him as just a side strain, which I thought was a bit comical because I don't know what a side strain is. It could be there's a big side of your body that could be numerous different things. I saw him. I think it was might have been against the Kings, but he hurt himself and went out of the game pretty quickly. So that's a big out for them. He's their kind of leader, even when he's not scoring. They've got a pretty mixed roster talent wise. I think they'll be competitive. Being away from home again could be an issue. We know how bad that was for them last season. Their mental health, it's been well noted. There were a few guys on that squad that really struggled. I like McDowell White. I think he had a fairly good year last year when he came on. But I just don't think they have enough on a nightly basis to put points on the board, quite frankly. That's where I think they're going to struggle at times. They seem to dry up in spurts. They had a decent preseason, but I think they're in the middle of the pack. They'll get some wins, but they're not going to be in that 4 at the end of the season.
They've got a lot of tools to work with. You look at their lineup and, they've got most bases covered. They've got a good coach in Dan Shamir. I really like the way he goes about it. But as you say, Abercrombie injured already. They've also had COVID problems already. We know that they've got travel problems as a result of that. But, you just love the way that they dig in, and particularly last year, I mean, hats off to them. One of the great performances for them just to tough that out because, it could not have been easy for them. And I just think that it's going to be tough for them again this year. Take nothing away from them. They've beaten Southeast Melbourne Phoenix in the preseason. We saw Finn Delaney hit a 3-ball on the buzzer, which was just extraordinary to win. And they came from well down. I think they were 9 down in the last quarter against the Kings and beat them in the preseason as well. So they are full of heart. Love what they bring to the table, but I'm not sure that they're going to have enough consistently in that game against the Kings. Jeremiah Martin had 23.7 assists and 5 steals. So that gives you an indication of the quality he's going to bring to the table. And I'm really big on the youngsters they've got coming in as well. You know, Hugo Besson against the Phoenix, he had 24 in that game. And in the same game, Usman Jeng, 18 points, 9 rebounds, and I really like the bounce that he's got. He's a young player. You know, they've recruited Yanni Wetzel this year, which I think is a good pickup. And him and Rob Lowe in tandem are going to present problems for other teams, and that's not to mention Peyton Siva, who arrives here with a huge reputation. And Will McDowell-White as well had his moments last year as well. So, you know, they've got a lot of bases covered. But again, I think it's going to come down to getting consistent wins. And given the struggles they have off court in terms of their travel and being away from home, etc., I mean, it's almost like they're starting behind everyone and already now with COVID issues so far. So I just think that, you know, I've got other teams ahead of them. And I think you said you might have had them around number 7. Well, that's the number I've got next to the New Zealand Breakers as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And they've it'll come down to whether they get home games as well. If they can get a few home games towards the end of that season, it can help. But much like last season, they're already out of the race when they got those home games. And this could be a similar situation if they're based here for the first, you know, 2/3 of the season and they're banking on those home games. It could be too little, too late. So there are some young pieces. I think Shamir, this is arguably the season he's going to probably earn his money, I think. I like him as well. I've liked what he's done, but they just haven't had a whole lot of success, albeit not a lot of it has been just his fault. They've had injury battles, the COVID thing, the travel. They've had every excuse under the sun. But like you said, the one thing I like about him is you don't really hear that much about those excuses. They still come out there and battle, and you still have to beat them. They're not gonna lay down and just show up and be like, oh, it's not fair. We'll make up the numbers this season. We're away from home. They actually battled last season, which is a credit to them and what Matt Walsh has put together in New Zealand. And just quickly for Matt Walsh, I believe he was actually banished from the sideline at the Blitz, so he's already in the bad books with the NBL officials. He was apparently in the referee's ear, and apparently his voice was being picked up on broadcast of all places. So he got sent to the doldrums about eight rows back, which is, I love it though. I love passionate owners, GMs, coaches, but just a small funny tidbit for old Matt Walsh.
Yeah, I love it as well. He had some advice for the opposition players as well, which I love that. That's great. I think it's fantastic. I mean, is he the NBL's Mark Cuban, Matt Walsh?
Why not?
He's so passionate. I love what he brings, and I don't think any player is going to be offended or take offense at an owner, yelling out abuse to him, during the game. You'd say, bring it on, come out here, let's go type thing. It's sort of, I think it adds
former player as well. He played in some big leagues in Europe, and I like that. I mean, I know the NBL does it at times, but I think that back and forth, even if a player says, "Hey man, sit your ass down, shut up," I think it's great. It's those theatrics of what you don't want to obviously get to a situation where there's fisticuffs, but that ever rarely happens. But it's great for the brand. It's great. People talk about it. There's back and forth between the two teams. It maybe builds a rivalry. They're the kind of things the NBL needs to continue to market on. And I liked it. It was just a funny story that we heard in our little owners group chat. So we were all kind of giving it to Matt Welsh.
Yeah, well, he's putting his money where his mouth is, and his mouth can get busy at times, and I don't have a problem with that at all.
No doubt. Okay, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. So I have them in my 4. I think the one main reason for me is I think Brokoff's going to have a breakout year. I think he struggled last season. It's been well noted. He had some injuries. He was dealing with some mental health issues. But I think having him have a full preseason up his belt, get acclimatized to settling into Melbourne house. He's got a young child, getting his wife comfortable. That was playing on his mind a lot. Now he's got that settled. He's looked really, really good in preseason. I think he's one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in the league, feet set from 3. So he will help him. Glidden's still there. They're a bit of an older roster to an extent. Kyle Adnam, Mitch Creek had a fantastic season last season. He'll continue to build. I'm interested to see Kui. He's big Chinese, big fella, 216 centimeters. I've caught some games of theirs just briefly, and foul trouble is a big problem for him. So he's still adjusting. He's adjusted a little bit better towards the end of the blitz, but teams are just going to try to get him out of that paint as much as possible, put him in pick and rolls and get him to draw some easy fouls because they want him out of the paint. If he can be allowed to roam that paint, he changes a lot of shots in there. He's long, he can block shots, And at the offensive end, he's very, very long for those offensive rebounds and lobs. So it'd be interesting. Mumford, I think, was a very good pickup for him. And I believe they just picked up a backup 5, which I don't have the name here, but an import 5, which begs the question that they might be thinking what we're thinking, that Kui will be a bit of an adjustment period. There might be some foul trouble, and we might not be able to play him for more than 20, 25 minutes because of the pick and roll situation. So I think they've got a budget backup big who's a bit more mobile. So that kind of tells me that they're aware of their deficiencies and they're okay calling them out. But I have them, as of today, I have them in 3rd place in the top 4.
Yeah, they're in my top 4 as well. Devon Thomas is their second import that you're talking about. Had a 4-year career at Wake Forest, averaging 16 and 10. So he's a backup. Look, I'm excited about the way that they're going to play. And I know that plenty of their fans are as well. And so they should be, because on what we've seen so far, they're going to make it difficult for a lot of teams. And I think this is their year. Let's not forget last year, they were, 16 up in a deciding. They had Melbourne United on the ropes and, just couldn't get across the line. So they were that close last year. And they've improved this year in terms of their roster, from what I can see, that, I think that, they're right in the mix, the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. In fact, I've got them at number 2. I really think that they can do some damage. And Joe Chi, the centre you're talking about, is the way that it's been pronounced to me. I think he's going to bring a lot. They lost to the Hawks in overtime. He had 17 and 12 in that game, 10 and 9 in the game against New Zealand. So, he's putting together some reasonable numbers, and he looks as though he's going to be able to play. We'd be very familiar with the FIBA game as well, but I think he's going to bring more positives than negatives. I don't know that he's actually going to be as big a liability at the defensive end or, on the floor as some people seem to think. I just think that, you throw him into the mix and they get Dane Pinot back, who, had an outstanding year before he was injured, and they've got the experience. They seem to have every area covered. Mitch Creek's one of my favourite players, and that he's going to be driving the culture there, Cam Glidden. And you speak about Ryan Broekhoff. Well, it is. It's time for Broekhoff. This could be his year. It's going to be, hopefully, we're going to see the real Ryan Broekhoff, and he's prepared and ready to go. He started in that game against Sydney and finished with 12 and 10. So, he certainly can put up numbers pretty quick. And if he gets back to, we know what is his best, then teams are going to find it hard to contain him. So, a lot to like about them. And I think that they're certainly, as I say, last year they put the writing on the board. This year they need to back that up, and they're going to be playing off for the championship, I think.
Oh, killing me with the names. You just get them all right, mate. I struggle with them. That's why you're the head play-by-play guy in Australia, mate. But I think my one concern regarding Chi would be, I know Simon Mitchell is big on showing on pick and rolls. He's big on having that big. That's why they love Dane Pinot out there. Dane Pinot is very, very good at getting up high on pick and rolls, putting pressure on the guard, getting it out of their hands. With Chi, I don't think you can do that. You have to. You really have to tailor your defensive principles to try and go to his strengths, which is protecting the basket and keeping him in the paint at all costs. It was kind of similar to when I was in Sydney. We try to keep myself around the basket as much as possible to alter shots and get those rebounds. They're going to do the same. I think I got a feeling they'll tailor their defense more towards him to protect him a little bit. And that's why I think these more mobile bigs might just steal some minutes in certain games, like a Bryce Cotton, for instance, or someone like that. You probably don't want Chi getting out above the 3, showing and trapping a pick and roll, because he's just not the fastest fella and not as mobile. So I think that's a good thing to have in your pocket, because you've got 2 different defensive kind of schemes and lineups that you can go to. But I do know Simon Mitchell and the Phoenix, they do love putting pressure on the ball handler in pick and rolls. So I'd be interested to see how they kind of protect the big fella back there. Yeah,
I agree with that. Just one thing I wanted to pick up, just to go off topic just a little bit, about the fact that you're playing so close to the basket, when you were there with the Kings. Can I ask you about the 2003 Under-19 World Championships? Now, for those who don't know, Australia won the championship. You were the MVP. I think you averaged around 25 and 17 boards. You're an 18-year-old and you're in Greece. I looked at some of the stats recently, and you were jacking up a lot of threes back then. I mean, I don't know what you had 35 and 14 against Lithuania in the final to get us the gold medal. And there's 3. What was going on there? Were you a 3-point specialist back then when you were 18?
Oh, I got him up. Yeah, so when I was younger, under 12s, under 14s, I was stuck as a center, and then I didn't grow for like 2 years. So I had to figure out how to play the 2-3 spot, and then I shot the ball real well. I shot it well. In college, I was low 30s, I think. Internationally, the 08 Olympics, I think I was top 3 for 3-point field goal percentage. I think. I could be wrong. Someone sent this through on the basketball podcast that I think my 3-point percentage for the Boomers might be higher than Andrew Gaze's. I believe I could be wrong.
I'll check that.
I'm pretty sure at Olympic Games. I'm pretty sure. So I used to get them up, and then I just look with Milwaukee. I was more inside. I shot 18 footers in Milwaukee more than anything, and then the elbow injury, kind of changed the trajectory of all that. But yeah, you're right. I did hoist them up back in the day. So
back in the day, you weren't shy. And now in 706 NBA games, you hit 3 threes, I think.
Yeah, it didn't.
Do you remember any of them?
Yeah, I remember a few of them. Were late shot clock. Most of mine were usually full court or half court heaves after I'd grab the defensive rebound at the end of a quarter. So I'm a little bit pissed off about that percentage because of those ones. They shouldn't count. But I got them up. In the NBA, it was just a longer line for me. I never really felt comfortable to hoist them up from there. And then I guess in the NBA, once you're kind of half labeled as a non-shooter, you're assigned a role. You kind of I was happy to live up to that role as bad as it was sometimes. But it was funny because then I'd go back to the national team and start hoisting them up, and they felt good. So just one of those things that was just a weird nuance in my career.
Yeah, no, what a spectacular career it was, mate. So we could reminisce about, but maybe another time.
That's all good. Illawarra Hawks. So some might be shocked by this, but I have them at 2. I think Gorgin's second year, third year, fourth year, that you usually see growth. With what he's doing. I think they've got some young pieces, most specifically Harry Froling. I think Gorge is going to put a foot up his butt and get him going. And I think that's a guy that he has not unboxed the talent that he's been given because he hasn't been in the best shape. He carries a little bit too much weight at times. A very, very talented player. I think Gorge will get the best. He gets the best out of those guys. He was notorious for it when he was with the Sydney Kings. He was notorious for it with the Victoria Titans. He'd get young guys that needed a bit of a, ruffling every now and then, and he'd turn them into something. I think Justinian Jessup's going to be even better this season with a year under his belt and doing summer league and all of that kind of fun stuff. Sam Froling, again, he's going to further improve. Tyler Harvey, perennial scorer in the league. Who's going to fill that defensive stopper role for him? Rathan Mays, another guard for him, potentially, young guy for them that'll play into some spot minutes. Lachlan Dent, Isaac White, we know all about them. Emmett Nair, I think he's a key piece. I think he'll play a little bit more minutes. DeWatt Breath was, didn't play a lot for the Boomers, but I liked what I've seen from him in the preseason. He's shooting the ball from 3 pretty well, but just he's going to be a defensive menace, I think, in the NBL and protecting that basket. Antonius Cleveland will also be one of their premier imports, but they have a pretty well-balanced roster. But like I said, my X factor for these guys is that Gorgon second, third, fourth year trajectory with this young mix of talent and some guys coming back. I think they'll be up there. Yeah,
I think they're going to be right in the mix as well. Illawarra, I've got them ranked number 3 at the moment. And you're right about Brian Gorgian. He'll be better this year, and so will his team. I think it's the last roll of the dice for Harry Froling, though. Harry's had some chances. We had him here in Adelaide a few years ago and promised a lot. And I think it'd be fair to say that he probably hasn't lived up to the hype so far. He was talking NBA and right now, Sam, his brother, has gone ahead of him in terms of a pecking order, I would have thought, in terms of the Australian team. But it's, Harry's really got to step up this year. And if anyone's going to get it, well, if Brian Gorgian can't get the best out of Harry Froling, then trouble. Yeah. I don't know who can. I really don't know who can. But look, they've got plenty of good players there. DeWatt Breath comes with a very good reputation, but he's last couple of years, he hasn't been a game winner or a big numbers player. Maybe this year he will be that. So I need to see a little bit more of what he can bring before, I'm sort of really going to be able to, to speak of him a little more clarity. But certainly they've got a good roster putting together there. We saw they beat Melbourne in the preseason and Cleveland had 21 points. We know that he's going to be putting up numbers. And I think Jessup, you're right, he'll be better for last season. So earlier in the Blitz when the Illawarra beat the Phoenix by 4 in overtime, he hit 7 of 9 threes, a couple of nights like that for him and he's going to get them across the line. So Xavier Rathan Mays is another guard that I think can bring a lot to the table here. And Tyler Harvey is just spectacular. I just love Tyler Harvey. He plays at both ends of the floor and he can provide a bucket. You need scoring, he's going to do it. Isaac White came in during last season and put up some good games and good numbers, and I think that he's only going to get better from that. So, look, where you look at their roster and you think, yeah, we've got most bases covered here. We've got the best coach in the competition. If this all comes together, well, we're right in the mix. And I think that they're certainly going to make semi-finals. And from there, well, you've got to be in it to win it, and they'll certainly be around the mark.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think Tyler Harvey last season, it felt like if he wasn't scoring or creating, they could not get a bucket. I think they've really adjusted well with their roster this season. They've made some tweaks, got a few more guys that can handle the ball, get them a bucket if they need be. Cleveland's one of them. So I think they addressed that. But, Justin Simon was their defender. So who's going to take that reign this season? So I think it's probably going to be Cleveland's going to get that role. Isaac White will get it at times. He's a little bit of a bulldog in there. That's the question. They've probably improved offensively. Tyler Harvey at times does get picked on defensively at times. He does a good job of keeping his chest in front and drawing a lot of charges. Some people will say flops, but that's part of the game. So they try to hide him at times, and they have to, because last season, if he was in foul trouble and he wasn't on the floor, they could not score the ball for the most part. So I'm going to be interested to see that and who takes the reins of what Simon was last season, because he was phenomenal defensively for him, and he's going to have to, someone's going to have to fill his role of, I've got Golding or I've got Sobey and I'm shutting them down. He was happy to do that, and I thought that's why they had a lot of success, because he was happy to do that, which you don't often get as an import. Hey, we want you as a defensive stopper. We don't need you to score. And he bought into that role very, very well, I thought, last season.
Yeah, without a doubt. He was spectacular. Really like what he brought to the table. And I think the point you make is that it's incumbent on all those players now to step up a little bit. They need to funnel the players toward Diop Reith and, the rim protection that he provides. And hopefully they're going to be able to restrict teams to a score that they can beat, because they've got the firepower there to put points on the board. So there's a lot of upside, and I think Illawarra Hawks fans can look forward to this season with a lot of optimism.
No doubt. I think it'll be a fun time for them. Okay, the Brisbane Bullets. So a lot of unknowns here. That they have a decent roster. They'll be competitive. They've got some fiery guys there. Former assistant coach Mr. Duncan is the head coach there. Congratulations to him as well. He's a fantastic guy to work with and has coached all around the world. But yeah, look, I have them towards the bottom. I had them at 8. They will be competitive. I think they're better than 8, to be fair. If I'm looking at it again, I think they're better than 8. But I just don't. I need some more from Patterson. I think he's come back in much better shape and looks a whole lot better.
Much better.
He was not looking good last season. He was getting bigger and bigger. But he's one of those guys that could have a bad eating few weeks and get bigger again. You need him to be in peak physical condition, and for what he was doing with an out of shape body last season, he was still performing pretty well. So I think he'll take a big step up. Tyrell Harrison has continued to improve as a big, so he'll be their rim protection. Wigness, very, very lauded young talent in the NBL, so interested to see him continue to build. Didn't have the best first season, but was in and out of the lineup at different times. But this starts and ends with Sobey. His jump last season was phenomenal. I really enjoyed watching his progression. I actually tried to get him in Sydney a couple of years ago. We had some talks with him initially. I just love the way he goes about it, and his improvement year on year. People forget he came from the minor leagues, a Siebel, the VBL essentially many, many years ago when Joey Wright recruited him. You'd know better of where he came from down that way. Warrnambool, I believe.
Warrnambool.
Yep, and he's just a fiery dude that'll fight you. And I got into it with him when he was with the Sixers, and I love that about him. I love his fire. So. And he's a legitimate MVP candidate. I thought he was easily top 3 MVP voting last season, in my opinion, and I think he'll be that again. His 3-point shot has dramatically improved. More so, he doesn't have a bad technique. It's just it was a confidence thing where if he missed his first couple or he'd just be gung ho on trying to get to the basket, even against guys like myself, and trying to finish it over a big guy. Whereas now he's 0 for 5. He'll shoot the 6-1. You won't know he's 0 for 5, and that's the mentality change in Sobey. So I've been really happy watching him. I think they'll be competitive as well. I just don't think they have enough to get into that top 4 case.
Yeah, I must admit that I had them down at number 8 as well, and I agree with you totally that they are better than the number 8 next to them sort of would suggest, because they have got Nathan Sobey, who was outstanding last year, 3rd in MVP voting behind Bryce Cotton and Tyler Harvey. And all NBL first team. He starts with him, and he is maturing even more so. I remember you're talking about when he first came to Adelaide, he almost jumped out of the stadium here one night blocking a shot. His athleticism was just outstanding, and he's added something to his game every season since then to get to the situation where he forced his way into our Olympic team, and as I mentioned, top 3 in MVP voting last season. So Nathan Sobey's, and it's the first time in his career this season that he's been the oldest player on the team. And speaking with him just prior to the Blitz, he's really embraced that leadership role. And I think the bronze medal is going to do wonders for him and his psyche and what he'll bring to the table here for Brisbane. He's such an important player and one of the most exciting players in the competition. So he's set for another big season. And just while we're on vets, I spoke to Jason Kadee as well. And I mentioned the fact that Sobey was the oldest man on the team, and he wouldn't be far behind him. And Jason, his quote to me was, "I'm not old, I've just been around a long time." And, and that's the truth. And that's the truth because, we spoke about how long I've been involved in my 4th decade in the league. I remember going to West Sydney Razorback games to broadcast the game, and he was out on the floor taking free throws as a kid.
Yeah,
and
geez.
He's been on the court with a basketball in his hand since probably he could walk. He brings so much to the table. I saw him coaching or helping James Duncan coaching there during the Blitz there the other night, and he brings so much in terms of a smart player, an IQ, the operator that he is to get his teammates involved, and he doesn't make too many mistakes. So he brings a lot to the table. But you mentioned Tyrell Harrison. I think he's the key. He has to step up. There's no Hodgson there now. There's no Magnay there. He's the big. And how Brisbane go is going to depend a lot on how he goes. And he needs to be involved in the offense as much as he can, and he needs to stay out of foul trouble. So he's certainly the key. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Isaiah Moss, one of their imports, so far, so it's hard to get a good line on them. But Lamar Patterson has been outstanding during the Blitz, and he's set for a big season. We know he can score. You can throw the ball to him, and he can create. And you're right, he's in much better shape. He's looking back to the original Lamar Patterson that we saw that first hit the NBL, and back in 2020 he was 3rd behind Cotton and Machado in MVP voting as well, and sort of in 19 and 20 was all NBL first team. So he's going to be again a focal point for them. But and one other I wanted to mention was Tom Digbert, who is the next star, and boy, has he got some energy and some talent. I think he's going to be one of the highlights of this season, this young man, and I'm really excited about what he's going to bring to the NBL. So I spoke with Robert Franks as well, and he's a quality import that they're going to get good minutes from. So as I say, the more I look through their roster, with those backup players in Wigness and Krebs and likewise, Deng Deng and Drimmick, we shouldn't leave him out of the equation as well. He's always active and always looking to promote something for his team. So there's a lot there that you can, ticks a lot of boxes, the Brisbane team. And the fact that I've got them with an 8 next to their name at the moment, I might have to revisit that because it's hard to believe that they're going to finish 8th.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they were, a bit stiff on my rankings, but I think it's just such a tough year. You could arguably flip them with New Zealand, even, potentially put them up to 6, but it's a close year. And I mean, we're putting it on the table, so I'm sure we'll be wrong about a few of them, but they'll be fun to watch. As I said, they got a rookie head coach in the NBL, James Duncan, who was with us, assistant coach to Will Weaver and Adam Ford in Sydney. So I'll be interested to see how he goes in his first head coaching gig in Australia. All right, Melbourne United. So you spoke that you don't have them in your 4. Neither do I. I've got them at 5. And I'm kind of half tossing it up just because Daly is probably, he's a better version of Mitch McCarron to an extent. As of today, who knows? Because Daly hasn't played a lot of basketball the last 12 months, but he was the NBA.
I think they've flipped that now. I think, with the age and the profile coming up the mountain, coming down the mountain, I think that, there's very similar players in many ways, but I think maybe Mitch is just edge ahead of him. But the jury's out on that because we haven't seen Daly play here this season. So, but I'd have Mitch just ahead of him at the moment.
Yeah, my whole thing is I don't like doubting Daly because he's a winner and he will, that group will come together. I feel like there's a bit of an age issue there. Golding's obviously going to be their gunner offensively. David Barlow's will continue to be a big piece, even though he's getting up there in age. They have a lot of younger players. Will they fit in? Brad Newley's obviously revitalising himself there and has played pretty well in the preseason. Ariel Hukporti looks to be very, very solid, but will Vickerman count on him for big minutes? That's the question mark. Caleb Agata, same kind of question. I think he'll be a solid scoring threat for him. Okwera, an athlete, won't be counted on too much offensively, probably won't play a whole lot, but will be used as that McDaniel role to be more of a stopper. Dion Prewster. Jack White's the interesting one. When he comes back, I think he can be a ball of energy for him that can really help him. Joe Lual-Achul has had a fantastic preseason. He had a 38-point game in that preseason?
37 and 11 he had against New Zealand.
And he's not shy. He's going to get him up. Even when we played him and scouted him, we knew, hey, when this guy catches, he's going to shoot it. But you love that aggression, and he's definitely made some improvements year on year from when he's been in the NBL. Mason Peatling the same. He ended up playing into some minutes last season because of the Jack White injury, and I think he proved himself pretty well. Shea Ely, I love his energy. He comes off the bench. He's a terrier, picks up full court. Really annoying for our opposing team point guards to try to get the ball over half court. And then William Hickey and Triplett probably won't play a whole lot, but they'll be in the mix every now and then. But it's more so just seeing who Vickerman trusts late in games and throughout games. And I think their first probably 4, 5, 6 games, he's going to be figuring things out as much as we are about who they are and who they count on for those 30-minute blocks besides your Golding and your Dellavedova.
Yeah. I guess I have them fifth because, I tried to find room for them in the top 4. And as I say, it's rare that you will leave out the defending champion out of your top 4 for the following season. But I just look at the players that they've lost, and obviously Jock Landale's a massive loss for them. I don't know how you actually go about replacing someone like him. Yes, Jack White is going to be outstanding, and when he comes back, but when does he come back? And when he comes back, how long does it take him to get back up to the style and the standard that we saw from him at the start of last season? I remember him playing the first game here in Adelaide, and at that time I thought he can be Defensive Player of the Year. He was just outstanding, the leadership he provides, and do-it-all type scenario he brings to the table. I think he can be outstanding, but he's coming off that injury. Now you're right, Dellavedova, I guess, an unknown quantity in terms of what we can expect from him. I just don't think he's going to be a high-scoring guard, and that's not his go. That's not his MO. So who is going to be their scorer? You take a look through their team, and David Barlow, another year older, Brad Newley, veteran status. Lual-Achul, yes, is going to have to step up and did in that game against New Zealand where he had 37 and 11. But he can be in and out of a game, and he does get emotional, and he needs to, just be on a level and playing high quality and high intensity for the whole game. And that's going to be the challenge for him this year. Shea Ely is outstanding. I've always been a big fan of his coming in that backup role, and Huck Porter you mentioned. But you look at that team and their roster and you say, well, where are their scorers? And their 2 main scoring threats are going to be Chris Golding and Caleb Agata.
Yep.
And they're very similar players. They're going to be spraying up shots and tough shots and making tough shots as well. But I'm not sure about the balance of the team that Dean Vickerman's got here at his disposal. And as you say, with so many new faces and changing the whole thing up, losing your premier big in Landale and your point guard in Mitch McCarron, that's a lot for the whole team to get its head around. So I think there are just a few question marks around Melbourne, and the age factor again, you can't underestimate that. So throwing all those things into the mix, I think it was just a case of I found a reason to have 4 teams above Melbourne rather than rating them number 5th. That's just where they fell, that I could find more reason to have 4 teams above them.
Yeah, like you said earlier, you don't often see an NBL champion not picked in the top 4, so we both could have egg on our face. But I think, look, they'll be competitive. I think they're going to struggle to score at times. They're going to have to really grind it out defensively, and I think they've got some really good defensive players. But it's going to come down to those young guys. Like Huck Porty's going to be, if he has a good year for him, obviously a rookie in the NBL, a young star who's tapped to be an NBA player one day, he's going to have a good year for him. Peatling, Achul, those guys need to be solid. And I think Jack White, if they can, get him back earlier, it'll help. But yeah, it just does not seem like it's an over-talented roster right now. I think it's a solid workman's roster. They'll get wins based on that, and I have them probably higher than I probably should based on what their roster looks like, because I think they will outwork teams as the season goes on for stretches with the way Vickerman coaches. They'll just try to grind games out. But yeah, the scoring is definitely an issue, and who fills into different roles, like the Jock Landale hole for them. I think Achul's going to have to fill that as far as scoring down on the block. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. I mean, I'm really interested to see how Delhi goes. One thing about Delhi is people don't realize he hasn't played a lot of basketball the last couple of years. You know, he had some concussion issues his last season in Cleveland, where he honestly didn't play for 6 or 7 months, then went to an Olympics. So he hasn't played consistent full season of basketball for a while. And we saw obviously his form, you know, people were talking about, oh, what's wrong with Delhi? Well, his role is not to be flashy and get points, as you said. So he got a little bit of a unfair treatment by some of our fans during the Olympics, but he hadn't played basketball in a long, long time. And so that you excuse him blowing out the cobwebs, unfortunately, in Olympics. I think now with the preseason, getting his legs back under him, you know, Delhi's a probably consummate professional when it comes to recovery and weights and doing all the extra things. I think he'll come out playing well, but yeah, I have them at 5th. I just can't put him any higher.
No, and I think it's just fantastic that Delhi's back in the league. I mean, full stop. He's going to bring people through, put bums on seats because they want to see him play. Such a great career in the NBA, but as you say, hasn't played a lot recently, and no doubt he's going to have good nights and bad nights, I think. But I think what we're sort of both around the same mark here in terms of putting points on the board could be the problem for Melbourne United, and Delhi's not expected to do that. If he can add that to his game, then maybe they are a championship contender. But right now, they're just outside the top 4 for me.
Yeah, and I think that's where Scotty Hobson was really good for him, I think. You know, even when he came off the bench at times last season, I felt like he played that role really well when they dried up a little bit. They could bring him in, and he was fantastic, but he's back over in the G League. I mean, I think they still have a import spot, I believe, that they can play with if they need be. So we'll watch that space. Perth Wildcats, the lucky last. Now, the funny thing about these two teams' case is if either of them win the championship, Hutch is a happy man. I'm not sure if he's I'm just wondering if he's still got his United shares just quietly. So we'll see how that goes, but we've given him a little bit of shit in the group chat. So when those two teams play in the regular season, he walks away with a smile on his face either way. But you can never doubt the Perth Wildcats.
No.
The age-old story, longest playoff run in Australian sports, or finals run. Big question mark for me is home games for them. That plays a huge role in where they finish. I think they're rounding out my top 4. Where they finish in that is going to be dependent on what Mr. McGowan does with those borders out in WA, because their home base, as much as I hate them, they're phenomenal. They're a phenomenal fan base. They do cause the intimidation factor with players and officials and referees, and it is a tough place to get wins. So you take that away completely. Let's say devil's advocate, they can't get home till July because McGowan wants to close the borders forever. That changes things for me. I think they're still top 4, but I don't think they're as dominant. If they have those home games, I'd probably almost put them closer to 1 if they had all their home games. I still think they're a very, very good roster. Bryce Cotton is just an unbelievable player. The schemes that he faces on a weekly basis, when we used to scout him, everything was Bryce Cotton. If we stop him, we'll beat the Perth Wildcats. They've got some good young talent. You know, Jack Purchase, they got from Victoria, Corey Sherville. Wagstaff has got another year, good veteran leader. Kevin White, good veteran leader. Luke Travers, I'm really looking forward to seeing the jump he makes with, I think he kind of peaked late last season and took that jump and then realized like, hey, I can be a really good player in the NBL, and really started to get minutes with the injuries they had. So I think with a preseason now and get some confidence up, I think that'll help them. I think the Hodgson pickup was really big for them, and that kind of came out of nowhere. No one really saw that coming. Picked him up late, a good rim presence for him. Michael Fraser will be good for him. He's had some NBA/G League experience. Mitch Norton, he was lauded by a few teams. The Jack Jumpers boosted his value very much, made Perth get the wallet out, which is always a good thing for the player. But I know he was wanted by a lot of teams. His veteran leadership, probably a poor man's version of a McCarron or a Dellavedova, in my opinion, like that kind of role where he can affect the game without scoring, which is what you want. I thought Blanchfield had a really good bounce back career year last season and was part of a winning culture where he was influential towards that. Victor Law's looking really, really good in preseason. I think that's the 1-2 punch that Bryce probably didn't have last season. So I think having him on that in that roster, that is a pretty decent roster in my opinion. Some people are counting them out again. I'm not. They're definitely in my top 4.
No, well, I think a few experts around the league counted them out a couple of seasons ago and ended up with egg on their face. And my stock standard with the Perth Wildcats is they're in my finals, whether it's a 4-team, 6-team, whatever the number is. They're in forever until they miss out, because they just find a way to do it. And when you say Bryce Cotton, Vic Law and the Red Army, Well, that's a lot of wins already there, regardless of even discussing anything deeper than that. Yes, rookie coach, sort of throws a wrinkle in there.
Arrived very late as well. Yeah, arrived
very late as well. Yeah, actually hadn't, wasn't even in Tasmania on the opening day when we did the promo shoot down there for the NBL, was arriving the next day. So I think there are a couple of things that do work against them, but as I say, they just keep finding a way. They're in my top four. I've got them in at fourth at the moment, and they're in there until anyone can prove otherwise. I just wonder, though, if the unthinkable were to happen and the Wildcats miss the playoffs for the first time in 35 years, there's a little bit of pressure on Hutchie. Does he then have to wear the tag, of sort of, the weakest link there? The team, he's bought the team, and now that they haven't worked out for them, I don't know how that affects Hutchie.
Schmozzle, yeah, he's put the jinx on him. We'll see. I know he's. We know our friends out in WA love people from Melbourne, so they're a little torn out there in Perth. They're a little torn.
He'll be the scapegoat.
They're torn. Oh, he's going. Yeah, you better win it.
Yeah,
otherwise you're in some trouble.
He'll be run out of town. But you mentioned the fact with the borders, etc., in WA and what the Premier over there, Mark McGowan's going to do. Well, the way that it's been structured now, they're going to play their first 7 or 8 games at home. They could be 8-0. Through their first 8 games before they have to go on the road. And if you're building off that platform, or 6-2 or 7-1 or, something along those lines, then you think you're a long way down the track to making the Final Four. Bryce Cotton looked in great shape when I saw him in Tasmania. And as you say, Vic Law. Now, the only thing that worries me about Vic Law, he's a high-quality player. He could be the best import in the competition. But during the Blitz, I've noticed Vic complaining a lot to the referees, and that's something that it puts just this little question mark in my mind. Vic needs to play hard, and his talent, his ability, that's going to get him a long way. He just needs to leave the refs alone, concentrate on what he can bring to the table. The good news for the Wildcats fans is that Todd Blanchfield is ahead of schedule in terms of coming back from his injury. Mitch Norton was just extraordinary, what he put himself through in last season's finals, and he's a gun. He's someone I'd have in my team, one of the first pick, because you know what you're going to get from him, and that is a never say die attitude. He brings a lot to the table. So, you talk about some of their other players like Luke Travers. I think he's set for a breakout year if last year wasn't a breakout year. I spoke to him in Tasmania a couple of weeks ago about the playing against Josh Giddey last season and seeing what he does and seeing what he's translated to in the NBA, that gave him confidence and optimism about what he can do. And he was nodding his head along those lines and saying that, that's the type of player he thinks he can be at that standard and play an NBA standard. And if he's going to be able to do that, then this year he needs to step up and be a force for this team. Frazier's a worry, has injury problems, didn't look good at all in the Blitz. It's never a good sign if one of your imports is injured early, if they have to nurse him. But the positives are Matty Hodgson is there. Majuk seems to be back to his best. Jesse Wagstaff we know is a winner and will do whatever it takes. So, they tick a lot of boxes again as well. And, you look at their roster, you look at what their fans bring to the table. The Perth Wildcats are definitely in my top 4. And as I say, they're going to be there forever until they don't make the top 4 because they just know how to win.
Yeah, and it's a fair point around starting in WA. I just wonder if they can get back in. That's the question. Once they leave to come out east and do their long road trip over here, I just wonder, if they're potentially in the finals, how that all works, because it's a pretty crazy time right now. Especially, I think WA is probably one of the most gung ho states as far as closures. You hope it the NBL is obviously thinking shit by after Easter, May, June. Hopefully things have opened up and gotten better around finals time, but that could be a potential rabbit in the hole. You're right. You can get into a finals and probably not have a finals game on your home floor if the borders don't, reopen. So that's a space that I'm definitely going to watch. Just to finish off real quick, we appreciate that's both of our ladders. I'm sure we'll be right about a few and wrong about a few. When every NBL team comes to town, Case, which is the one team that wins or losses don't matter? Which is the one team you want to see against Adelaide 36ers? Which team in the NBL is the price of admission team for you that you really want to see?
Look, this year or overall? Well, this year.
This year, yeah.
Yeah, this year. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing the Aurora Hawks come to town. Always a lot of fun. When Gorge is in town and what they've brought to the table and the way they put their roster together. I think the Hawks, one team that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Obviously, Perth Wildcats, you love seeing Bryce Cotton come to town as well. But The Hawks there, they bring a lot to the table, and Xavier Rather-Mays, I think, is going to be exciting. Tim Digbert from Brisbane's going to be exciting. I think, most teams this year, because there's been such a huge turnover in personnel, that you can find a reason to want to go and see each team when they come to Adelaide. But I guess if you're going to pin me down to one team, I might even go with the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, only because the Mitch Creek scenario and everything that he brings to the table. The fans still love him here. He loves them. And you're guaranteed that something exciting is going to happen when Mitch Creek is in town. So the Phoenix will be one I'll circle, but I'll be very happy to be courtside at each of the 36ers home games this year, because I think they're going to win a lot. And, they can even win the whole thing, as I said earlier.
Yeah, I'm probably Adelaide. I think I'm excited to see how that roster comes together and rookie head coach, and I can hopefully get to a game and heckle CJ while he's coaching and try to talk a bit of shit to him. But I think their roster's got the potential to be, to be a championship roster. I just don't think it's going to come together straight away. I think it's going to take a year or two, but I like their talent on that roster. I think they'll be exciting to watch, and I like Hannah's. I think he's going to be a fun guy to follow, just getting hoisted in one of those no conscience shooters, just going to fire them up at any cost. They're always fun to watch as long as a few of them go in.
Yeah. Well, look, you're welcome in Adelaide anytime. We loved having you here as a player. And you can come and sit. I'll organise the front row tickets for you. You can sit there, not far from where CJ will be operating. So that'll be an interesting scenario. Andrew Bogues front row, maybe just offering some advice for the 36ers bench here and there against the Kings. That'll be outstanding. We'd love to see it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, Case, appreciate it. Hopefully everyone got something out of that. This season should be a cracker. A lot of curveballs to come with COVID and borders and road trips and all that kind of stuff. But thankfully, we're going to get some basketball back on TV in Australia, on Australian soil. The NBA's obviously started, but it'll be good to have this start. What is it? A little over a week away from tip off. So we're looking forward to it. Thanks, Case.
No worries at all, Bogues. Always great to talk to you. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to seeing you here in Adelaide during the NBL season. Get out and see some games, people. That'll be great.
That's it. Thanks. Cheers.